Darryl Gebien, it's a former physician up in Barrie at a hospital who pled guilty to trafficking and forging hundreds of prescriptions for fentanyl, about 445 of them. He recruited strangers, including taxi drivers, drug addicts, and other hospital employees to help out with his scheme. He had a beautiful wife. He was an ER doctor and 3 kids and lost them all because of a fentanyl addiction this half hour on the show, Graham. All right. Thanks, Darryl, for coming into the radio station. You can find what we're about to talk about in this current issue of Toronto Life. Darryl Gebien is in the studio with us. Darryl, thank you very much. This is quite the story that you have. I mentioned off the air that this could be a movie. Let's talk a little bit about your early life and how you tell the story in Toronto Life about how you first, gained a familiarity with taking pills to deal with pain.
Thank you for the introduction too, and it's quite a description. It sounds awful, but there's an important story to tell here, and it starts with being exposed to opiate pain medications to take by mouth for back pain. So that was back in 2008. I was about 38 at the time, and it was excruciating back pain. At the time, my mother saw what I was going through and tried to help me out.
So, so you go through all of that. You talk in the story in Toronto Life about how you did have pills available to help out with your back pain. So take us through where you then have Percocets, and you're a young guy, and there's a talk of a party where you and your buddies are playing PlayStation on a Friday night. And one important thing that actually turned the corner for you with your use of drugs, going from a pain medication to what?
Yeah, so that it was a recreational drug choice at that point. So in the beginning, it started for pain, and then that prescription lasted about a year in my medicine cabinet. And then, again, it's with shame that I say this, but I decided to, one night when my friends were over for a couple beers, and I wanted to see what it was like to try it this time for fun. And that was a horrible decision, ultimately leading to many years later to a total catastrophe for me.
So from playing PlayStation, I think you were playing golf with your friends, and you had taken a couple of Percocets. That was your first kind of introduction into it no longer being a medication and something that you would do for fun.
Right.
And so what was your first connection with fentanyl?
So that's many years later now. So the Percocet helped with pain. It was also more of a, for me, I guess it was a stimulant. It helped. I was doing shift work at the time and helped keep me awake. So there's wakefulness, and I would call it at that point like a happy pill, but is a double-edged sword, so it's not the happiest thing. Fentanyl is, I graduated to that many years later, and this is at the height of an addiction, and at this point it's about trying to avoid going through withdrawal. That was where fentanyl came in. It wasn't a matter of getting high; it's a matter of avoid being sick. And then I soon discovered that Pandora's box opened, and once I was on the fentanyl, it just sped up everything because it's so much more powerful of a drug. The ups and the downs, like the getting high and then going through withdrawal, is much quicker because it's a very short-acting drug. And this is what carves the way for myself and many other people to do what seems like very unreasonable, crazy things. But it's the withdrawal and the fear of going through withdrawal that compels people, and things like prostitution, theft, people stealing from their family and their friends. They burn all their bridges. And for me, it was about writing inappropriate prescriptions.
And the first time you smoked it, and what made you want to smoke it, by the way?
Again, this is going through withdrawal. So this is much later, deep into my Percocet addiction now, where I'm a slave to the drug. Didn't have any more Percocet left. I had a patch that I was using properly. But again, this is a part of me that it's ugly, and I admit it, but it's just, I'm human. This is what happens sometimes to some people who are inclined to addiction. But instead of wearing the patch properly, I chose to Google it, and I had heard about people smoking it. And, when I look back now with a clear mind, it's embarrassing. But I'm discussing this publicly because this is how crazy this medication is. If it's used properly, then no problem. If it's used according to what your doctor says. But I chose to cut it up into small pieces and smoke it. And after the very first square, that was the beginning of the end for me. I mean, it was so strong, it was so addictive right at the
What
start.
did it feel like for you?
In medicine, we call it euphoria, but what is euphoria? I said before, it's like a happy pill. So a person feels happy, all your anxieties go away. It takes away the stresses of life, and this is where people can get hooked on it because it's a maladaptive coping mechanism. Stress affects us all, and unfortunately, for some of us, we withdraw or medicate our pain, emotional pain or physical pain, with these medications that do such a good job. That's how the opiates work. They take away the psychological component of the stress. And so I was self-medicating myself at this point now to not for a high, but to avoid withdrawal. And
Yeah.
withdrawal is a horrible, horrible situation.
Could you read that part right there that you wrote in Toronto Life, that part that I put in the paragraph there? Because I thought that was really powerful and kind of profound about what fentanyl did for you anyway, and probably for a lot of people.
Yep, I'm just scanning it over right now. Scared, we're talking, what I'm seeing right now in front of me is just a description of what I think fentanyl does to your body physically. And the big motivator here is withdrawal. This is what this paragraph is about, going through withdrawal. And this, I didn't get it for the, up until I went through it myself, like as a physician.
But what you wrote there, I think, is pretty powerful and kind of underlines no matter what somebody's addiction is, what an addiction does for someone.
Right.
But you talk about how fentanyl is in a magnifying glass on all of your happy times. And when you're not on fentanyl, then all of your sad times come to the forefront. So you then want to go out and get some more fentanyl because you love feeling that euphoric high.
Right. It's a nasty cycle.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens. And then the guilt kicks in, the anxiety, the self-loathing, and saying, I'm not going to do this. This happens to a lot of addicts. And so the next day they go through like the guilt of taking it, but then they say to themselves, I would say to myself, I'm not doing it today. But sure enough, the cycle repeats itself and more self-loathing. So you medicate even more to get rid of those negative feelings.
You're smoking it 15 times a day.
At the height of my addiction, yeah.
And you're still a doctor during it.
Well, I wasn't, just to make it clear, I'm not smoking when I'm working.
But I mean, if it's such a powerful drug, it's 100 times more powerful than morphine. How could you function during the day as a doctor? You're wearing a patch, but I mean, that doesn't make sense, does it?
I think we need to look at what drug tolerance is. So with the opiates, a person needs to achieve the same effect, they escalate their doses. And so this is what accelerates the addiction. So at this point, it's even though we talk about how strong it is, it's all relative because it depends on how deep into the addiction, how deep into the tolerance that person is. And so for me, switching from smoking fentanyl to the point of putting a patch on, because I developed a tolerance, did not impair me. However, if somebody's opiate naive and takes to try smoking one small bit.
So you're saying on the patch was normal for you, smoking it was your high?
Yes.
Okay. Darryl Gebien is with us. He is a former doctor up at a hospital in Barrie and was arrested and has been charged with writing bogus prescriptions, 445 of them for fentanyl. When you hear that number, what do you think?
Well, it's incorrect, actually. So it's 400. It's prescriptions that included 445 patches in total. So the number of prescriptions was much less than 445.
But in total, that
regardless, it's awful to hear it. It's shocking. I mean, I guess I'm desensitized now to hearing it.
How much would how much, like when you're cutting them up into these squares and smoking them, how long does a patch last?
It depends on the user. For me, it would last a day.
It would just last a day?
Yeah, I wouldn't go any further than that. I stopped myself from developing more of dependency, and I just stopped it at that.
You were on Percocet in Arona when you first realized that you were probably an addict. How did that come about?
So this is going back now in time, but it starts with the back pain. I start escalating my use. I used it recreationally occasionally, and the Percocet. And again, there's a lot of shame and grief with that. I just need to say that. But there came a day several years later, and this is why I think opiates are so sneaky when they're not used properly. So I was taking them inappropriately and more frequently than I should have. And there came a day where I didn't realize what was going on, but I basically reached over the cliff into the world of dependency. So when I woke up that day, I met Rona with my contractor, and I'm really irritable, and I don't know what's going on, and I'm anxious. And it all went away when I took a Percocet later that day. Is like when I concluded and realized, frightened, oh my gosh, this is, I'm dependent now on this medication. And the user, I didn't know when I was over that cliff. And that's why it's so important for younger people. This is a frightening, terrible drug, and I thought I had it under control, but clearly I didn't, because I went into the world of withdrawal and dependency, and people are playing with fire. I hear about young kids taking what they think is Percocet, and there happens to be fentanyl or carfentanil in it. But regardless, I mean, hearing 14-year-olds are taking this kind of drug, this is a heavy, heavy drug, and I want the listeners to know you are playing with fire. These kids are playing with fire. Stay away from the opiates in general.
It makes you into, the smartest guy around, because you were hiding it everywhere in your house. And you're also a father of 3 kids.
Right.
When you look, I mean, you talk about it with some shame in the article about how it makes you feel looking back. How does it make you feel?
I mean, currently, how does it make me feel? Or, I mean, at the time, it can be both. I mean, the harder part is when you're going through it. It's easy for me now with a clear head to look back and see, it was just a total disaster. And how could a doctor, myself, who worked so hard to get to where I was in life, and how could I go from A to B? Like, what happened? And that was a wake-up call for me as I started cleaning up, went through detox and cleaned up. And it's been over 2 years now. And I still think about it and go, how did that happen? Forgiving myself is a very tough thing as well, because there's a lot of repercussions because of it. It affected my family. My children are now in New Brunswick living with their mother. So many losses. And we're not talking financial here, but at the same time, I want to put a positive spin on things. And I've gained so much back. My family was so concerned about me. I'm finally back to them. I'm finally present for them. My ex-wife and I are getting along fine. I think she'll finally forgive me. The important things I realized in recovery, the most important things, it's not. I was never a big person of I must have money and all the fancy things, but what I realized in recovery, the most important things are family, people, relationships with people is the most important thing in life, and I finally got healthier. It took me almost 2 years to get over this horrible addiction. And I'm at the point now where I'm starting to give back because it's in my heart. I am a physician too. I want to give back and try to help other people. My creativity, my imagination came back. A lot of good.
Because, I mean, you were doing some things. You were like knocking on strangers' taxis' doors, asking and getting them to, recruiting them to write a prescription for them so they would go in and get you your drugs. I mean, it was a pretty low you were at.
Extreme low. I don't want to get too much into the details just because I have a sentencing hearing coming up, but
could we just talk about how your mom passed away? Were you going through all of this? What happened to your mom?
Sure. I guess just going back, I mean, that's just a sign of desperation, and to look at that objectively is a sign of someone who is obviously desperate to approach a taxi driver. Yeah. So that is what it is.
Why don't you want to get into it here when you got into it in the article?
Sorry, say again?
Why don't you want to talk about it here when you talked about it in the article?
Yeah,
because I'm not trying to paint you as this. I mean,
it's painful. That's
I
all.
think you probably living through it is more painful than us talking about it right now. And I see a guy here in front of me who's been clean, and is kind of like, it's a remarkable story that you're alive. It's a remarkable story that you're fighting for, your family, and now have realized the important things. And it's kind of a role to all of us to say, hey, don't go down that road.
Right.
But I think talking about how bad that road was to where you are now is the remarkable part of that journey.
I think it's incredible. I think it's so important. I kid about it, calling it level 6 communication, where, we're not talking about news anymore. We're talking about how things are affecting me emotionally. And I've found in some of my talks that I've had that people are responding to that. So what I mean is that if I'm talking about my feelings, share my feelings. I learned this in recovery. It's like my wife has been telling me that for years. But if I share my feelings and how things are affecting me, then people can respond to that.
Yeah.
And it's really opened up other people to talk about how things are affecting them. I would love this for the medical doctors. But going back to your question, there's a couple of things. We're talking about my mother. That's important to bring that up. But I'm not afraid to discuss the story. It's just I'm scared sometimes, and it does hurt when I
You're
do it.
scared because you've gone through all of this, but still you're facing jail time.
Right, and I don't want to be putting my foot in my mouth and putting we're talking this is before sentencing. Most people wouldn't be doing this, but I sense the urgency of the situation. So I just need to be careful. I don't mind discussing things, but I need to sometimes be careful about what information I'm giving, especially when it has to do with the legalities.
Are you concerned that any judge is going to look at this as some sort of ploy for compassion or leniency?
That's possible, but all I can do is I can't control that. I know what's in my heart. I know that the day I got out of jail, I was in there for 3 weeks, and it was very motivating. I hated the fact that I was marginalized from society, and just 2 weeks before that, I was working physician, for the community. So it is in my heart, to come out and speak out about people. And if somebody wants to think it's a ploy, then so be it. But
your mom, we didn't get to that. Your mom died of a fentanyl overdose. I mean, how? All along, knowing that you were going through this, that must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, irony is an understatement here. My mother worried so much about me. I wish she could see me now, but she knew me best. She was going through her own problems with severe intractables, meaning not going away, back pain. And she had several surgeries. No surgeon wanted to see her because her back was so messed up. She was waiting for another appointment, but it took months and months, and her dosing of fentanyl escalated, and it was unintentional overdose. She, I think, lost track of how much was on her person, like it's a patch, it stuck to you. And this is a very long story in itself, but in the end, it was the day before my birthday. Actually, it was on my birthday, the day she passed away. And I know without a doubt that was accidental. There's no question about that in our family, but it's kind of ironic. And again, that's not even the word to describe it, but to see the woman who cares so much and worries so much about me to lose her life in the end because she lost track of the fentanyl patches. Again, I want to make sure the viewers understand that the fentanyl dosing, if you're taking it properly, is not harmful. It's when someone goes up and above and beyond that.
I'm sorry we're short on time, but are you afraid to go to jail?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And do you think you've paid enough for what you've done?
I paid a lot, but I mean, the judge knows the situation.
You lost your family, lost your house, lost probably your profession. Do you think you'll ever be a doctor again?
I'm hopeful. We'll leave that up to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. I've certainly paid a lot. I mean, but I trust in the judge that I have that I had a pre-sentence report that was recommended some good things it showed that I've been doing a good job, and this is from a third party. So I will respect the judge's decision. It's in his hands.
And you're living with your father now. You're doing some work installing floors.
Yeah, we do balcony flooring. I created this business also soon after I got out of jail. I've never been so close with my dad. Another good thing, it's him and I have never been this close.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wish you the best of luck. Just because I can't say your name, will we consider that a success if I can say Gebien?
That's it, Gebien.
All right. Thank you very much, and good luck to you. And it's an incredible story.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it.